This is Study Now, an international student recruitment consultancy headquartered in London with a growing presence globally in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. A student-first organization built on a simple belief: opportunity should not be limited by borders. Over the past 5 years, we've helped thousands of students turn their study abroad dreams into reality. With about 3,500 successful enrollments and a 98% visa success rate, we're not just facilitating admissions, we're changing lives. We proudly partner with over 150 accredited universities worldwide. And in April 2025, we awarded 6 scholarships, including 3 full undergraduate tuition scholarships and 3 50% postgraduate tuition awards, because opportunity should be shared. With partners across key markets, our reach spans the world. From one idea, we built a worldwide recruitment network, combining digital scale with local insight to serve real student needs. Honored with York St. John Global Excellence and Global Brand Elevation Awards, University of Hertfordshire Recognition Award, and University of Sunderland Agent Award, we've guided thousands into trusted universities worldwide through course and university matching, visa support, and enrollment. We empower students, partner institutions, and communities touched by global graduates. If you're ready to build the life you've dreamed of through impactful education, take the bold step today. Don't study later, study now.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Chris or Christopher. I'm the Admissions and Compliance Officer at Study Now, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the UKVI Credibility interview. So let's get underway, shall we? Firstly, I would introduce you to what the UKVI Credibility interview is, and then I'll be walking you through vital steps that you should take in preparation for the interview, and then certain things that you're supposed to know before you attend the interview. As we go further into the session, I will be speaking to you on the common format of the interview and how the interview is expected to be conducted, and then I'll be talking to you about the most common questions that you would find in a credibility interview, and then how to demonstrate genuine intent as a student coming to the United Kingdom to study. And then also I'll be talking about questions. We'll be focusing specifically on questions related to funding, as that's the key area in the UKVI interview as well. And then I'll also be talking about how you can link your career plans to your study plan, and then also bring that in with your background, your academic background as well. So moving forward from that, we'll also be discussing points such as how to prepare effectively also for the interview, and then I'll throw the session open for a Q&A. So let's begin. Firstly, what is the UKVI Credibility interview? So basically, a UKVI Credibility interview is an interview scheduled by the UKVI, UK Visas and Immigration, to simply assess the credibility and genuine intent of students who have applied for a student visa to come to the UK for the purpose of studying. So basically what this interview does is just the UK's way of determining if a student is credible or their intentions are credible, and if what they are saying that they want to come and do in the UK is genuine. So basically, it's similar to a precast interview. Now, for most of us who are privileged to go to schools that have precast interviews, the UKVI interview is similar to a precast interview. However, it's more detailed and it's more in-depth. The questions demand more precision from them, and you're required to give more details about your responses. So why, like I said, why the interview is conducted is to just for the UKVI to acquaint themselves with the person who has applied for a student visa to come to the UK. So it's not really a difficult interview. It's a very easy interview to take. But then again, the answers are very, very technical and it requires a lot of depth of knowledge. Now, how does this affect your visa application? Obviously, it affects your visa application in such a way that you will, if you don't do well in the interview, you will not be able to get the visa. So that might be a problem for you moving forward. So it's something that you need to also understand, that if you do not do well in the interview, you will not be getting the visa. So there's a lot of emphasis put into being very, very good and being very ready for the interview. And that's why we are organizing this session. Now, it's important to note that about 40 to 50% of all visa applications from Nigeria that are student visa applications are being invited for interviews. So if 10 people apply for a visa to the UK for their studies, there is a high chance that 4 or 5 of them will be called out of the 10 for an interview. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that there's something wrong with the person's visa application. It's just a somewhat standard process right now that the UK has, put in place for students who want to come to the UK to just evaluate their credibility. Now, when it comes to understanding your CAS and your intent and your immigration rules, is very, very important before you sit for your UK interview, for you to get yourself acquainted with your CAS. Now, your CAS letter is issued to you by your sponsor, which will be your school, and the CAS letter contains specific information about your studies, chief of which is your CAS number, your student ID, your full name, your international passport number, the school you're studying at, the exact location of the school. It also contains information like your tuition fees, how much you've paid. If you're going for an undergraduate, you may have paid tuition fee to you may have paid for your accommodation to the school. It also contains how much you've paid for your accommodation. It contains your cost, your program start date and end date, the duration of your program, and then any other information that would be attached to your program, like if your program comes with a placement option and so on and so forth. Now, the first step in preparing for a UKVI interview is to acquaint yourself with the details on your CAS letter, to make yourself very, very acquainted with the details on your CAS letter, such that they are not a problem for you before the session. So now, one thing I know is that nobody's going to ask you your student ID and nobody's going to ask you your CAS number. So I wouldn't really focus a lot on memorizing those ones, because those digits are very, very long. But at least you should know your student ID. But then your CAS number, or I don't think that's something that you would need to memorize. However, like I said, it's important for you to know when your program starts, when it ends, the duration of your program, how much your tuition fee is, what your program level is as well. So for people that are going for undergrad, it's RQF level 6. For people that are going for postgrad, masters precisely, it's RQF level 7, and for PhDs, it's RQF level 8. So you need to have that information handy. These questions most likely may not be asked in the UKVI interview. However, I would refer to them as low-hanging fruits, because they are very, very easy questions to use to score points. So if you're able to attend to those questions properly, then it would mean that you know everything that's in your CAS letter, and then that would give you some sort of confidence if these kind of questions are asked early on in the interview. Now, like I mentioned earlier, obviously the UKVI interview seeks to just verify your genuine interest to come to the UK for the purpose of study. Now, what's the common format of the interview and how would the interview be conducted? Now, the interview is conducted online. It's a virtual interview, so you don't need to go to anywhere in particular to attend the interview. You'll be sitting in the comfort of your home or your workspace, much like I am, and then you'll be sitting and attending for the interview. Now, you will be interviewed by an individual. You may be male, you may be female, but definitely you'll be interacting with a human being. Not really like what I'm doing here, because obviously I can't see who I'm interacting with, but then again, you'll be speaking as somebody who will be giving you feedback or asking you the questions, and you will be mandated to respond to the questions that the person is asking you. So yes, that's how it's being conducted. Obviously, you also need to come with your international passport, very important for identity verification. You might have included your international passport in your visa application, so it's very important for you to have your international passport with you. You may be asked to open it, place it side by side so that you can verify your identity. That is very, very important. So the duration of the interview would vary. It could be as short as 15 minutes, it could be as long as an hour and 30 minutes. So it depends on a lot of factors. Okay, it depends on how well the student answers, what kind of questions they are being asked, how many questions they are being asked, how well the student is able to explain, or how poorly they were able to explain. In any case, there is no set or fixed amount of time for the interviews. I've seen interviews that have lasted 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, and an hour and a half. So it's not necessarily the case that, if your interview doesn't last for long, you have done something wrong, and if it lasts too long, you've done something wrong. It's also not the case that if it lasts 15 or 20 minutes, you nailed it, or if it lasts for an hour and a half, yeah, you scored very well. It doesn't necessarily, how long you spend on the interview doesn't really tell you anything about the interview. What matters is how well you're able to attend to those questions, and if you've hit the right points, which I will be explaining to you how to approach. Now, moving forward from this, the structure obviously is recorded. This is a recorded interview, and they might be typing out your answers, or they would be recording your responses. So in any case, you have two ways it might be conducted. Either your responses are going to be typed out, in which case you'll be expected to respond very, very slowly, or you'll be expected to follow through with the pace of the one who is recording your answers or typing them out, or you'll be expected to speak freely in such a case where the responses are being recorded and no one is typing them. But in any case, be rest assured that your responses will be recorded, and after which it will be passed on to a caseworker to match with your documents and every other thing that you've stated during the interview. So this is generally how the interview is going to be conducted. Now we move on to common questions that have been asked during the UKVI interview. Now, for these questions, I will start with three major questions. So firstly, the most important question that you're going to be asked is, why have you chosen to study at this school? Now, this question is, why have you chosen to study the program? There are three major questions that you could be asked. Okay, but however, there's a plethora of questions you could be asked. It could be, I think I've heard at least 50 different questions that you could be asked in a UKVI interview. But in any case, I am sure that whichever interview you're sitting for and however long it is, you will be asked these three core questions. Why have you chosen to study this program? Why have you chosen to study at this school? And why have you chosen to study in the UK? Now, other questions that could accompany it would be if you've made any comparison between this particular school and any other school in the UK, or if you've made comparison with the UK and any other country that offers your program. You would most likely be asked your post-study plans, your fees and your funding, how you intend to take care of your living expenses and your tuition fees whilst you're attending school in the UK. You would also be asked, what methods you use to research in coming to the UK, which is a new question that people are being asked, and I'll tell you how to attend to that question as well. And then you could also be asked, details on your CAS, obviously, which we treated initially. For those of us who've had visa refusals to the UK, we may also be asked, what circumstances prevailed at the time when you were applying for your visa, why were you refused, and what have you done to address those issues as to why you've been refused. You would also be asked about your program. You would be asked about your course. You'll be asked in details to explain your modules, and sometimes you may not be asked in details. Sometimes you'll be asked to go into details. You'll be expected to, discuss your learning outcomes, talk about the school, talk about your program overview. Why have you decided to study for this program at this time? Especially for those of us who may have a study gap, you will be treated to questions like, what have you been doing over the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, depending on how long your study gap is. And just for context, the study gap simply is from your last academic engagement to the one you hope to go for. So if you graduated from school in 2019 or 2020 and you want to go to school now, your study gap will be 4 years plus coming up to 5 years. Okay, so yes, it's just from when you last finish your previous academic engagement to present. So that's how to determine your study gap. And you'll be asked to explain, what you've been doing since. You would also be asked to explain maybe how, for those of us who may be switching careers, okay, you will be asked to explain, to align your current study plan with your either academic background or professional background. So these are the kind of questions that you will be treated to. But in any case, the fundamental questions that you will be asked to be, why have you chosen this program? Why have you chosen the school? And then why have you chosen to study in the UK? So it's very important that you know how to answer these three core questions, because they form the basis for any other line of questioning that would emanate or that will come up as a consequence or through the course of the interview. So these questions are very, very important because, like I said earlier on, it's a credibility interview and it's made to assess the genuine intent of the student to come to UK to study. Now, another thing to note is this, just to give you a hint and a pointer, two things will stand out for you in preparation for this interview, and this is very, very particular to Nigerian students. If you have not written your personal statement by yourself or your research proposal by yourself, a UKVI credibility interview would be difficult for you, because it's no news that some people are not very, very good at writing. They are gifted in speaking but not writing, so they find it difficult to articulate their points in written format. So they will rather outsource that responsibility to someone. I do not recommend that. Sincerely, I do not. And one place that can actually expose this bad behavior is in the UKVI interview, because a personal statement is supposed to be a student's expression for their genuine intent and why they want to study in the UK. So if you're not able to express that from the onset, and precisely studying in the UK and at the school, if you're not able to express that at the onset, when you've been invited for a UKVI credibility interview, you will be scrambling. And for those of us that want to go study for a master's by research program in the UK, if you've not written your research proposal and your personal statement by yourself, you would be exposed during the UKVI interview, because you may be asked questions along those lines. So usually a personal statement would answer the first three core questions, okay? And then, if you're privileged to attend a precast interview organized by the school, you would also be treated to questions like that as well. However, in a UKVI interview, you would need to speak more and go into great detail about the points that you've discussed in your personal statement and in the precast interview. So if you were not able to articulate those points properly by yourself in the personal statement, and you were also not, maybe you didn't really feel like you did very well, but by a stroke of luck, you were accepted into the school after the precast interview, it's best to bear in mind that a good starting point would be to revisit the kind of questions you were asked during the precast interview, if you remember them, and your personal statement and your research proposal for all those of us that are going for either PhD programs or Masters by Research programs. So one way that you can demonstrate genuine academic interest and genuine interest in the school is through responding to the question of why have you decided to study this program and why have you decided to study at the school. Now, for most of us, there are two types of students that you would usually find attending schools in the UK. One, students whose academic and professional background align with their study plan, and students whose either their academic qualification does not align with what they want to do in the UK, or their professional background does not align with what they want to do in the UK. So these students largely fall into these two categories. Either you have somebody who studied something like biochemistry, for instance, and they've been working in maybe at a lab, or maybe in one health organization like that, or maybe in an administrative role in the healthcare system, and then they're applying for something like public health or biomedical science, and then that student will fall into the first category. Or you have somebody that studied microbiology now, and then she's been working as an admin officer at the lab, and because she's been treated to a lot of managerial her role is mostly managerial. She wants to go study for project management, but her background is in microbiology. So in this case now, you will find out in the first instance, the person that is if the first person that studied biochemistry and wants to go for public health after working in the healthcare sector is invited for a credibility interview, that person might not struggle. However, if you find someone who's changing field for one reason or the other, from microbiology to maybe an MBA or maybe project management or human resource management, depending on their work or the nature of their work, you will find that that person might struggle to align what they want to do in the UK with what they've been doing up until now. So students usually fall into these two categories. So what for the first case, it's pretty easy actually. If you've applied to a program in the UK that aligns with your academic and professional background, the best thing to do is to go back to your university transcript. And for those of us who've got good results, I recommend strongly that you pick on the programs that you liked and you performed very, very well in, and bring that into what you're currently discussing in terms of progression. So it's very, very important for you to establish the fact that what you did in your undergrad, you did certain modules that you find maybe similar to what you're going to do in the UK. However, you're going to build on that. So the point is, you want to create the idea that it's a continuum. Okay, so your progression is linear and upward and direct. Okay, that's what you want to do. So for people like us now who studied biochemistry, easy, you want to go into biomedical science. We could talk about clinical chemistry that we did. We could talk about chemical pathology that we did. We could talk about pharmacology that we did. And we could say, we've done so and so modules. This is what it talks about. And in our role as a scientific officer at the National Reference Laboratory under the National Center for Disease Control, these were the certain things that we did. And then we want to build on that by getting a master's in biomedical science because of so and so thing that we've experienced in our professional professional line, that we feel like this master's will add value to that. Another thing in this case that you want to do is you want to also position yourself. You want to position your master's degree as a solution provider. Okay, so when you're talking about your professional background, obviously, if it aligns with your academic background and your study plan, it's still easy, it's still linear. However, you want to make the case that even in as much as you're still continuing along the same line, there are certain challenges that you've experienced as a professional. Okay, and you want to go ahead and list maybe about 2 or 3 challenges that you've experienced over the course of the last year that you've worked in that establishment, and you want to explain how this master's degree is valuable going into and how it contributes to your expertise upon your return to Nigeria, and how it will help you solve the problems that you've identified already. Now, what have you done? You've expressed the fact that your undergraduate experience aligns with what you want to go and do. You've listed modules that are similar in your bachelor's degree and then in the master's degree that you intend to go study. You've also mentioned certain things that you do that are in line with what you want to do, such that what you want to do adds value to those current skills that you have. And then you've also discussed certain challenges you're facing and why this master's will be important for you coming into this session to actually smoothing out your process and ameliorate these challenges. That's what you want to do. So that is how to respond to the question of, why have you chosen this program, if at all you're asked and you are continuing along the same line. Now, for most of us, which is, the overwhelming majority of people who are applying to the UK, they're actually switching courses or switching, areas of expertise for one reason or the other, which is actually not bad. However, it's very, very important for you to know that you will face some challenges. For instance, now, like I explained, you have someone who studied microbiology going into a master's of science in human resource management, simply because she works at a big lab in Nigeria, and then because of the fact that she's a microbiologist, yes, they will allow her to work in the lab, but we all know as science people that there's a lot of discrimination in the lab. So somebody that studied medical laboratory science would get employment before you that studied microbiology in the lab, even though you and them did the same thing in school. But because they are licensed to be in the lab and microbiology is not a professional course, they might say, okay, yeah, you're going to work in this laboratory facility. However, you work in the human resource department because you understand the terminologies, but you will not be allowed to enter the lab and conduct those tests. So in this case, now you find out this individual is not in human resource because they want to be in human resource, but they need a job and they're making do with what they want to what they have. So the person continues along the line of human resource management, and then maybe 3 4 years down the line she enjoys it, and now she's a HR person. She's done some certifications to just give her an edge in terms of promotion. But then again, she's found that there are some challenges that she's experiencing because she's not well versed in HR, okay, human resource management. She's not actually done any formal training as a human resource personnel, so she needs to study for a master's degree. Now, in this case, there will be a lot of emphasis placed on your professional experience more than your academic qualification, because your academic qualification in this case is not as important to human resource management as your professional experience over the course of 5 years or 3 years that you worked in that field. Okay, so it's very, very important for you to be able to establish that as a basis for why you are going for the program. And you also need to position yourself in such a way that you've explained how you got into that role, what you've done in that role, what achievements you've made, and what limitations you have, such that by the time you're talking about this, when you're bringing in why you want to study the program is coming in now as a solution to those challenges that you're currently having, which will now position you or position the masters as a valuable asset moving into your career prospects. So this is how to attend to those questions. So what I would avoid is generic answers such as it will give me the skills and knowledge to progress into bigger roles. It will let me it will allow me get a better job. It will equip me with the knowledge that I need to progress in my career, things like that. I mean, you need to be more detailed than that. You need to say what skills you'll be getting, the kind of knowledge and expertise you'll be getting, where you see yourself working, why is it valuable to you, what are the unique, and also when you're talking about the skills, you need to not just soft skills like communication, teamwork, and all these things. Like, this program will help me to work in a team. No, you need to talk about technical skills. Like, if you studied economics now, you want to go for a program in data science. Obviously, you cannot just be saying, I want it will help me. It will help me in. It will improve my data collection skills. What do you mean by data collection skills? It will improve my analytical thinking. You don't give generic answers like that. You talk about technical things in data and in data science, like programming language like R, Python. You can talk about structured query language, things that are very, very technical and valuable, and not just to mention these skills, how and where you're going to apply them upon your return or completion of the program. So this is very, very important for you to understand. Now, when discussing the school, you need to also take into account that there's a sub question that can be asked in this case as did you compare this school to any other school? And in some cases, you might not even be asked that question. But in any case, I recommend that you merge both questions together. One, why did you choose the school, and did you compare the school to any other school in the UK? I recommend you merge both of them and discuss them simultaneously, but in such a way that your comparisons add up to the add value rather to the school that you've chosen. Take for instance, now you've got a school that offers a master's of science in data science, and you've chosen to study in London. And I also recommend that you talk about why you chose the city when you're narrowing it down to the school, because when discussing the school, there needs to be some inclusion criteria or basis for comparison, or things that you would have looked at before you shortlisted the school. Like, what were you looking at? And in this case, I do not recommend that the tuition fee would be the primary reason, because I know a lot of us from this part of the world, the money is a challenge for us. Okay. And then there's a lot of emphasis put on the cost of the program. But in any case, I do not recommend that you lead with that. A good start would be to make sure that your reasons are strictly academic. So one of the things that you would need to consider when talking about the school is, ranking. Ranking is very, very important in the UK. Okay, it gives you an idea on how well the university is performing in certain metrics. So there are, program specific rankings. You could check, where this where your school ranks for certain programs. Like if you want to study data science, where does the University of let's say where does York St John University rank in terms of data science? Where does University of Westminster rank in terms of data science, and things like that? So you also want to check general rankings, like things like student satisfaction and all that. Then you also want to check the the curriculum as well. How detailed is the curriculum, and in so doing, you would also evaluate, how you will be taught, the teaching methods, the assessment methods, if there's any, special addition that will be given to people studying the program, and if the program is affiliated to any licensing body. So that's another thing to check, like for project management now at York St. John University, which I'll be using for most of the examples in this case, in throughout this session, will be York St. John University has accreditation with some of the international bodies for project management. So there is a probability that if you study there, you have you have leverage to attain some of those qualifications. So that might be one of the reasons why you're choosing that particular school, which is good. Okay, which is another good inclusion criteria. Then another thing you could talk about is maybe the location. What value does the location add to your learning? Okay, why would you want to study data science in London? Why would you want to study data science in Manchester? Why would you want to study something like agriculture in Scotland? Why would you want to do a particular program in a particular location? Does the location add any value to your learning? That's another inclusion criteria. Okay, the duration of the program is another inclusion criteria. Most programs in the United Kingdom are 1 year. Okay, so you may be, however, for people that want to get a lot of professional experience, especially those that are fresh out of school, they might want to go for the programs that have, a work placement option, okay, for another maybe a year or 6 months after their program. So, you might find a school that is 1 year, however, it does not have the option for placement, whereas you find another one that is for 2 years and that one has an option for placement. And in that case, that one is, what you want to take. So that's another inclusion criteria. I picked this particular program because it has so and so option to it, and I feel like if I get this, because I just finished the university now, if I study for this program and then I go on after studying, or along the course of my study, to do a work placement, then I will be able to achieve so and so, such that when I return back to the job market, I'm not only returning to the job market with a degree, but with some professional experience that will add value to my employability. Now, that's how to attend to such a question. So you need to first of all establish a basis for your comparison, and you need to determine what your inclusion criteria is. Once you've done that, you can go on to say, these are the reasons why I shortlisted this school. You understand? And then you now go on to explain how the school has met your inclusion criteria. Okay, so if one of the reasons for you choosing a school is say, like I mentioned, partnerships with internationally recognized licensing bodies for certain things. If the school has that, that might be a good reason. Okay, and then again, so you might want to visit the university's website to determine some facts about the school. Okay, like on the university's websites, they usually have their rankings, their stats, their achievements, and all that. So you might want to visit that part of the university's website to also determine what achievements the school has and how those achievements affect you. But most importantly, it's not just to check, how what achievements they have. The most important thing is how those achievements affect you. So it's not to come and say, oh, the university was ranked 10th out of 102 universities for postgraduate experience. Yes, we know that, and while that is good, but What does that do for you? How does that contribute to your learning experience? You understand? It was ranked, it received an 84% positivity score for how good lecturers are at explaining things. Wonderful. We all know that anybody can go read a statistic online and come and parrot it during the interview. But what does it mean for you as a Nigerian or Ghanaian student going to the UK to go and study? Hearing that a school has an 84% positivity score for how good the lecturers are at explaining things. What value does that statistic add to your learning? Now, also look at facilities that support your learning. Okay, like for instance, now York St. John University has invested £100 million or $100 million into their infrastructure, into making the school the school learning environment very, very good for people that are coming in to learn at the school. What does that do for you? What do you know about the libraries? What do you know about the dormitories? What do you know about the school in general? Okay, and how does this knowledge affect your learning, and how has it influenced your decision to study at the school? Okay, and then again, you want to go into the curriculum and discuss the curriculum. But most importantly, it's not just to say the names of the modules, but how these modules affect you personally. So in any case, what you would need to do when talking about the school is how the achievements of the school and the facts of the school affect your learning and your ability to come out or get the best outcomes out of your study plan. That is the most important thing and the most important approach to the problem, or to the question rather. So if you're not able to personalize and you're not able to find out, genuine reasons why it's important for you to learn at this school, your response will fall flat. Now, in comparison to other schools, it's also important for you to know certain facts about those schools and how they measure up to the school you decided to study at. For instance, now when it comes to things like ranking, you might want to check, okay, for data science, I'm comparing to York St. John, I'm comparing to University of Westminster, I'm comparing to something like maybe another school like maybe Anglia Ruskin or something like that. And then maybe all these schools have this particular program, but which one ranks higher? Is it that did I pick this? Did I pick Anglia Ruskin because Anglia Ruskin University ranks higher in terms of data science? Is that why I picked Anglia Ruskin University? You might want to investigate that. Then you also want to go to the modules. Okay. Now some schools may have 12 modules, some schools may have 7, some schools may have 6, some schools may have 3 or 4. So depending on the kind of learner you are, some people want less, some people believe less is more. So for somebody, they want to learn at a school that has just 4 modules throughout the whole year, and they don't want to do much, and they feel like the 4 modules are curated to, they fit their exact career trajectory, and they don't feel like they should be paying, extra or even lesser for something that has, more modules. Even if the program is more affordable in another school, the fact that it has more modules means that some people will not take it. They'll rather learn at a school that has 4 or 6 modules compared to one that has, 8 or 10. So that's another reason why you could choose the school. Another thing is you need to critically examine the modules and discuss them personally and how they add value to your career prospects. Like for somebody that wants to work in, that wants to be a data scientist in the fintech industry, a data science program at York St. John University that has blockchain might be valuable to you more than another one at maybe University of Westminster that has AI and machine learning. Okay, and has a lot to do with artificial intelligence. Yes, of course, all these things are important, but for where you want to go to and the kind of career trajectory you're plotting, that particular module is not as important to you as something like blockchain. So you may pick York St. John University over that particular university because of that particular module. Okay, and you might have checked other schools, and most of their data science programs don't have that particular module. So you might decide to leave all of them out and settle for the one that has something that is tailored to your career prospects or gives you an advantage in terms of employability based on the kind of industry that you see yourself working in much later. So basically, these are just how the facts that you need to know when attending to questions like this. Furthermore, when talking about why the UK, it's very, very important for you to know certain facts about the UK. Okay, and these facts should be strictly academic facts. Don't go and say, I picked the UK because it's close to Nigeria. Okay, I'm gonna say I picked the UK because it's close to Nigeria. I picked the UK because the weather is okay. Yes, of course, if you're going or if you're an undergrad student and you're just leaving out your home for the first time, yeah, something like that might be important to you. But for postgrad, nah, that's not something you should be saying. Try as much as possible not to give vague and vague answers. Try as much as possible to make sure that your answers are very, very specific and are tilted more towards your academics more than any other thing. So it's very, very important for you to establish those points early on. Okay. So you might want to look for statistics that support learning in the UK. For instance, now you're choosing to study public health in the United Kingdom. All right. You might want to Google things like top 10 countries to study public health globally and then see where the university ranks according to any credible source. You might also want to Google 10 reasons why I should study public health in the UK and then look up credible sources and see the facts that they bring up. Okay. You might also want to examine, if you're looking at a research program, you also want to examine things like, what is the amount of research that is published by by universities in the United Kingdom annually, or in the last 10 years, how much has the United Kingdom's universities contributed to the growing global body of knowledge? You understand? Things like that are valuable to you. So when you're stating those points, it means that you've gotten points that relate to your studies more than any other thing. So that's very, very important for you. So these three questions are very, very important. And also, you might be asked as well, did you compare the United Kingdom to any other country? The answer should always be yes. And in listing those countries, obviously, you don't just list the countries and say, oh, I checked Canada, I checked the United States, and give generic answers such as, the United States, a master's there is 2 years, Canada, master's there is 2 years, whereas the United Kingdom, master's is 1 year. It might be true in some cases. However, research has shown that it's not all cases where your program is studied for 2 years in the United States or Canada. Your program will most likely have a 1 year variation of it, that even may be cheaper in Canada than the United Kingdom. So there are very, very good reasons that you could pick, like for people that are going for that have second class lower. One of the reasons why you might not choose to study in Canada is because your program is taught at a postgraduate certificate level, or you might get a diploma or a certificate for it and not a master's degree, because not all universities in Canada accept second class lower for masters. So you may not be able to come back with a master's degree. And even if you get a postgraduate certificate in Nigeria, or your home country, that credential might not be very, very valuable. So that is one point that you might pick when you say, okay, I choose to study in the UK over Canada. And then again, you need to list the schools. You need to list exact schools, and you make sure that they have the programs that you're looking for. For instance, if you want to go and study human resource management in Canada, or sorry, in the United Kingdom, and you're comparing to a school in Canada, you say something like Mohawk College now in Hamilton, Canada. You cannot say, I compared Masters of Science in Human Resource Management to Masters of Science say maybe University of Westminster. Now you compared it to Masters of Science in Mohawk College. Well, Mohawk College does not have Masters of Science in Human Resource Management. However, they have a postgraduate certificate program in Human Resource Management. So you also need to be sure of the credential that you are comparing, or the credential that you're naming when you're comparing. Okay, so these are certain things to look out for. You need to make sure that you've researched all these questions thoroughly. Now, when it comes to things like your funding, okay, how you'll be funding your studies is very, very important, and it's a very technical question. Okay, so the most important point to look out for here is first things first. It all depends on how you start. It's important for you to establish a breakdown, okay, and give the interviewer the impression that you actually know everything that has to do with your funding. So for instance, now your tuition fee may be 11,800, and then the school might say, okay, you need to pay 50% before you get your CAS, or you need to pay maybe £3,000 before you get your CAS. Okay, now you go ahead to do that, and then you receive your CAS, and then you have an outstanding balance. Okay, now it's very, very important for you to know how much your tuition fee is, how much you pay towards your tuition fee, what you're required to pay upon enrollment. Okay, and then how many installments you're supposed to pay your tuition fee balance, and then what your tuition fee balance is. And then for people studying in and out of London, obviously we know that there are different living expenses that you need to hold for 9 months in your bank statement, so that you need to hold for 9 months. So at the end of the day, you have your 1 month multiplied by 9, you get the total amount, and then you're expected to have that in your account for your proof of funds, and then you add that to your tuition fee balance. That's for those that were not able to pay their tuition fees in full before attending school in the UK. So you need to also express the fact that you know all these things. Okay, bring them together and let the interviewer know that, okay, this is actually what led me to reserve 45 million, 50 million, 80 million in my account. Okay, and then this is actually what is required of me in pounds. I have kept, the equivalent in my Naira account or in my CDs account held with so and so bank. Okay, and I've even buffered it just in case. I've added my travel expenses there, and just to cope for any fluctuation in exchange rate, I've added an extra 2 or 3 thousand to the account statement. And then again, you want to go on and express how much or how you were able to come by those funds. So for those of us who've been working for a very long time, we could say, okay, I've been working for quite a while, and then I've been able to raise funds as a consequence of my work. And I receive salaries, I get bonuses, I get commissions, I get incentives, and this is how I've been able to raise the money. Also, I've gotten support from my family. My father, who works as a this and that, he works he's a director in Federal Ministry of Petroleum, and he makes XYZ amount of money every year, and he has been able to contribute to my studies. My mother is a businesswoman, she's a contractor, and she makes XYZ amount of money annually, and she's been able to contribute to my studies as well. Please do not say that your friends have also helped you, because it's not a good sign to say that you're being sponsored by your friends. So this is very, very important for you to note moving forward. Now, please do not try to just say things like when they ask you, how do you intend to take care of your living expenses and tuition fees when you're in the UK? Don't say things like, yeah, I have the money in my accounts and I've held the money for over 1 month. Yeah, they know that, but you need to give them the breakdown and the details. So that's that for tuition fees and living expenses. Another thing that is very, very important for you is your post-study plan. So it's very important for you to know what your post-study plans are. Now, a general rule of thumb would be to allocate your post-study plans into short-term goals and long-term goals. Okay, so you need to split it. Now, when you're asked, what are you going to do after graduation? Don't start by saying, first of all, I'll graduate, and then post-study plans it excludes graduation. Graduation is not in your post-study plan. Okay, so don't start by saying you're going to graduate. Your post-study plan is everything you're going to do once you return to your home country and then onwards. So definitely you want to make the point that you're going to return to your home country, obviously, because it's a red flag if you say you're going to stay back and look for jobs in the UK. That's not a good sign. So you really want to make the point that, okay, you're coming back to your home country and you need to have a plan. Now, a plan is not something that you say vaguely or you just summarize. Like now, if I ask you, okay, how do you intend to come to work every day? Obviously, you're going to have to wake up, brush your teeth, take a bath, moisturize or do whatever, get dressed, put on your cologne or your perfume, and then if you're using public transport, you get into your public transport. Obviously, you know how much you're going to pay your public transport. If you're getting a private cab that's going to come and pick you, obviously, you know how much you're going to pay. You know your commute time. You know the easiest and the quickest routes to get to work, and then you know everything you're going to do from once you leave your house to get into work. You're also going to drive. If you don't have fuel in your car, you have to stop by the filling station, top up your fuel, and then start heading to work. Or you can, get straight drive through and all that. But in any case, every single thing and every step along the way can be accounted for by you. And if someone asks you, you can actually tell them. It's the same approach when you're responding to a post-study plan. Okay, so you need to be able to tell me every step along the way what you want to do when you're coming back to your home country. What industry do you want to work in? What role do you want to work in? How much is your salary expectation? Why do you want to work in that role? What problem have you identified that your master's will be able to help you achieve? And in what timeline do you intend to achieve those goals? Is it in the first 2 years? Is it in the first 3 months? Is it in the first 6 months? And then after you're done achieving your short-term plans, how do you intend to achieve your long-term career goals? Now, another thing you need to notice, make sure your short-term plans and your long-term plans are aligned. Okay, make sure that there is a linear progression with your short-term and long-term goals. For instance, now for those of us who will go to study for a master's degree in biomedical science, and then in the example that I gave, I had someone who studied biochemistry, worked in with the NCTC in Nigeria, and then wants to go study for project for public health or biomedical science. And then he says, okay, when I return, I'm going to work with, in the first 2 years, I want to come back to National Reference Laboratory and then work with the NCTC for, the first 2 years at the serology lab. And I'm going to be doing so and so tests, and I'm going to be doing this, and I'll be helping them in terms of things like quality assurance or, standard operating procedures and all that. And then he goes on to say, my long-term career objective is to open a hospital. How are you going to open a hospital? Or to own my own lab? Where are you going to get the money to own your own lab? You understand? So it's things like that that make your answers fall flat. Like, yes, of course, you have big dreams, but make sure that your dreams are achievable, reasonable, and actualizable. And when you're communicating them to someone who's listening to you, it sounds realistic. Okay, so make sure that you set realistic expectations for yourself in terms of how you're going to achieve those plans. And then again, what you want to do is you want to avoid any sort of contradiction. Please make sure that your answers agree with each other. Make sure that from the moment you're discussing your programs and your modules, when you're explaining how these modules add value to your career prospect, by the time you're asked what your post-study plan is, you're not saying something that is entirely different from what you explained will be your career trajectory when discussing the value of those modules to your career progression. So you don't want to disagree with yourself, because remember, like I said earlier on, the interview is recorded. And then again, you want to try as much as possible to be very, very articulate. Avoid things like saying, I think, and don't tap your head, don't shake your head, sit properly, sit comfortably, sit with your back against the chair, your head up high, and then, try as much as possible to maintain eye contact with whoever is interviewing you or your camera. Now, while that may be difficult to do, I'll teach you how. So for all those of us that may be using a laptop, recommended that you use a laptop during the interview. You have the top notch on top of your monitor. So you want to look directly at that top notch and not just at the screen. Because if you're looking at the screen, it will show that you're looking down. But if you look at the top notch, then it shows that you're actually looking at the camera and you're able to make eye contact with the person that you're being interviewed by. So this is how to attend to the interview. Furthermore, you may be asked how you've been able to make the research coming into the interview. Yes, I recommend, first of all, that you start with a timeline. All right. Now, it's very, very important to start with a timeline to show the full length of time that you have committed to the process. So you may say, okay, I started this program. I had the interest in coming to the UK, first of all, in January, after such and such and such happened. And then, from then I was actually confused. I didn't know how to go about it until 2 months later. I saw an ad online where, Study Now announced that they were doing a fair in April, and I attended the fair. And at the fair, I was able to meet with, universities, different universities from the UK and other countries. And yes, I went to as many tables as I could go through, and I discussed with as many representatives of these universities as possible, got their contacts, got their cards, and I decided to contact them and discuss with them on my own time how to go about admissions into these schools. And then again, maybe after deciding on the one that I want to do, or after shortlisting about 3, I went on to submit my documents to them for application, maybe 2 months after that. And then after I did that, I got the admission offers, and then I had so time to make the payment, maybe 1 month to make the payment. Okay. And then within that 1 month, I went to the school's websites. I looked at the school's websites and all that, and I was able to make my research, and I found, for objective reasons, that this particular school that I've chosen is better than so and so school. So all in all, my research took me about 6-7 months to make. And from maybe January to maybe June or July, that you'll be applying for your visa against September. Obviously, it's advisable to apply very, very early, not apply that late. But then again, in that situation, if that's your situation, then you just communicate it as such. If you're the kind of person that didn't use an agent, you might want to say, okay, I've tried to apply to the United States before and I got refused the visa. Okay, that was the reason why I decided to, go for another country. And in so doing, I shortlisted a couple of other countries. And this is the reason why I wanted to study in the US, but I didn't get the US. So I looked at other countries and I found the United Kingdom. And for so and so reason, United Kingdom seemed like the better option. So I decided to abandon my plans there and go on. And in that situation, so if you also want to make it known that you've always had the money to travel, and it was because you were refused the visa, that's why you didn't go. But you create the impression that you've had money also for a long time, which is another way of helping yourself to explain the source of your finances. Okay, so you can leverage on the fact that you were refused the visa to even explain the source of your finances. Okay, so yeah, and but also in these cases, if you were refused the student visa, if you were refused the visitor visa, then yeah, obviously that falls flat. But in any case, yeah, this is how to attend to majority of the questions. So just some tips before I throw open the session for questions and answers. Very, very important for you to review all the details on your CAS, acquaint yourselves with it. You may not be asked any direct question from your CAS letter. However, I will refer to the information on your CAS letter as low-hanging fruits. So these are low-hanging fruits because it's very, very easy for you to score points with them, whether the cost starts, what's the cost level, all those things. However, if you do not know any of those questions, you will lose credibility very fast and the interview will be concluded very quickly. Okay, and then also you need to make credible research, which is a problem that a lot of Nigerian students have, because research in our tertiary institutions is not very, very emphasized. Our lecturers and our supervisors usually don't have time for us when we get to our final year. So we find our own way to do our own research and come out with it. And by the time we are going to the UK, when they're asking you to research and compare, you have no way of doing, comparative analysis between two schools. You understand? And picking out which one is best for you, even if it's a subjective or objective decision you're making. You have no way of even making the inquiry in the first place. So it's good to, first of all, start researching the programs, researching the school, researching the country, knowing a lot about the location that you're going to study at, and other things that might add value to your learning. And then practicing your answers, try as much as possible to rehearse them. Look at different ways that the question will most likely be asked. Okay, and then try to rehearse different ways that you can combine certain responses to get the best outcomes. And then also try as much as possible, which is very, very important, to manage your time. Don't spend too much time on a particular question. It all depends on how you start. That's the general rule of thumb for any interview. It depends on how you start answering the question. If you don't start answering the question very, very well, they might either summarize your answer for you. And one thing I know about when you're answering the question and somebody tells you it's okay, let's move to the next question, is for one of two reasons. Either you're saying absolute nonsense or you've already made the major point and you're repeating yourself. So usually, is the first point. People don't make reasonable points, and then you just keep regurgitating the same poor answer. So they say, you know what, no, we're not doing that, and then they move on to the next question. Or you've already made a very, very good point, and you're about to shoot yourself in the foot, and they say, no, we'll let you do that. Let's move to the next point. Or you've made a good point, but you're making the good point like 5 more times. So they've heard it enough times. So done with that. So basically, this is all you need to know about a UKVI interview. Obviously, this information is not exhaustive. We could have gone into more details, but because of time, we'll stop here and we'll just allow for any line of questioning. So at this session, I'm going to stop talking and allow you to ask your questions and leave your comments in the comment section so I can respond. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.
This is Study Now, an international student recruitment consultancy headquartered in London with a growing presence globally in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar. A student-first organization built on a simple belief: opportunity should not be limited by borders. Over the past 5 years, we've helped thousands of students turn their study abroad dreams into reality. With about 3,500 successful enrollments and a 98% visa success rate, we're not just facilitating admissions, we're changing lives. We proudly partner with over 150 accredited universities worldwide. And in April 2025, we awarded 6 scholarships, including 3 full undergraduate tuition scholarships and 3 50% postgraduate tuition awards, because opportunity should be shared. With partners across key markets, our reach spans the world. From one idea, we built a worldwide recruitment network, combining digital scale with local insight to serve real student needs. Honored with York St. John Global Excellence and Global Brand Elevation Awards, University of Hertfordshire Recognition Award, and University of Sunderland Agent Award. We've guided thousands into trusted universities worldwide through course and university matching, visa support, and enrollment. We empower students, partner institutions, and communities touched by global graduates. If you're ready to build the life you've dreamed of through impactful education, take the bold step today. Don't study later, study now.
Hello, Port Harcourt.
What up, Lagos?
Abuja.
Abariako, Kenya, Tupo site.
The long-awaited day is here.
The Study Now experience has finally kick-started.
It's been an exciting day, the Study Now experience.
It was a most successful event. We had people, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, traveling from different parts of the city, even from neighboring states, all to be here.
So before we start any event, we actually have an initial briefing meeting just so we can understand, what kind of event it is we want to do and the kind of objective as well. So this allows us to come up with a marketing plan as well as an operational plan for the event.
We want to thank all our students for making it. It's been exciting, it's been informative. We've had the time to spend time with our students, explaining how and what it takes to study abroad.
I'm so glad I'm here today. I learned a lot from the speakers. Things I felt I knew were actually wrong, and today I grabbed it in the right perspectives, and I've learned how to navigate my life as a postgraduate aspirant.
When it comes to event logistics, we're talking about the venue selection, catering, the vendors for the branding, the kind of equipment we're going to be using as well in terms of our marketing. We're talking about lights, we're talking about sound.
One day I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw the advert and I clicked on it. That was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago. First of all, it was the one for Abuja, and I was heartbroken that I couldn't attend until one of the representatives from Study Now called me earlier last week and was like, I can attend the one in Lagos, and I was so excited. And I was like, I'm definitely going to attend today. And trust me when I say my coming here was not in vain.
So I came for this program with the expectations of learning more about studying in the UK, learning about tuition, scholarships, and even starting my applications on site. And all my expectations were met. I learned so much about YSJ. I learned about Bradford, the University of Bradford. I learned about Leeds Trinity, various other universities, and the welfare packages that they bring. And it was nothing short of amazing. I enjoyed this program.
I think one thing that I'm very keen on is guest experience, which is why, we have to take all these things serious. The venue setup as well is actually a very rigorous process because we're always there a day before, ensuring that everything is set up properly, the registration booth is okay, how the hall would be, what the flow would be as well. So we even have the roles and responsibilities of the day, so everyone knows exactly what to do, which is how we go about our planning. So in terms of the crowd, we had more hands that could assist with the registration booth. We even had to get like fair hands as well to assist us. I think another challenge was also the masterclass that we had. Everyone wanted to see Waka Waka Doctor, to speak to him, but we're able to, manage that well as well. In fact, I know there was a time where we just had to like swap the halls quickly so that we could get a larger crowd into Waka's masterclass.
It was actually very amazing to see how prepared students came for the event. Some came in with written down questions, others came in with their physical documents, some came with their soft copy documents, ready to proceed after getting information that they needed.
I would say we had a lot of challenges, and if at all, we were able to overcome it as well, even in terms of catering. Sometimes when it's break time, it's a bit strenuous because, you have a long crowd you're trying to serve, but we had more than enough people on ground to assist as well. So I think well done to the Study Now team for being able to, handle situations as they come.
Don't just from the world.